What do you do with the changing of the guard in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers backfield? Is Josh Palmer still startable if Mike Williams returns this week? And is one AFC South sleeper receivers big week 10 likely to continue in week 11 and beyond? Plus, the overall leader in the 2022 Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, Jason Conn, joins us to discuss Van Jefferson expectations in a cupless Browns offense, why Jameson Williams is not quite cuttable yet, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you so much, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all you Balkaholics and Farrelliacs. Welcome to a very special Tuesday edition of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. As always, presented by MyFFPC.com. I am your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to hash out whether Kenny Pickett might be a sneaky Week 11 start, whether Kadarius Toney is in for another big weekend, and more. Plus, the KFFSC main event leader makes an appearance to talk about Chase Edmonds' new role, replacing Dallas Goedert, and much more. That's all coming up with Jason Conn here in about 12 minutes or so. I want to remind everybody, if you have not joined the FFPC Weekly Challenge Week 11 yet, please do so. There is no draft. There is no salary cap. You pick your lineup, one player per NFL team. You can play with kickers and defenses and form a 12-team league, or you can play without kickers and defenses and form a 10-player lineup. You can only pick one player per team. I think I said that already, but just to make sure, drive home the point, because I always make one every week for some show content on the Better Sports Network High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, which you can watch tomorrow night at 10 o'clock all the way up until midnight with myself and football guys Drew Davenport. And I made a lineup, and I had two Bears on it because I'm an idiot. So make sure you don't be an idiot, and you make sure that you're only picking one player per team. If you want, you can play in a 30-team contest, a 100-team contest, or you can play in a 10-team contest, $200 entry fee, and the winner will get a free entry into the 2023 FFPC main event, so you can play for $1 million. You could also enter for as little as $35 too, depending upon the format you want to choose, and you win up to $2,500 cash. Want to remind everybody that we did a special RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown last night with the 40th place team in the Football Guys Players Championship, Eric Sisson. Follow him on Twitter at SYSYN. You might know him as Mr. Pink Stripes. He was on. We had a good conversation there, getting you ready for Week 11. And this will be the first of two shows on the FFPC YouTube channel and Twitter and Facebook tonight, as the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown will go live at 10/9 Central tonight with Rob Abbott, the 11th place team in the FFPC main event. So double dose of shows on Tuesday. You say, Bulky, why are you doing all these shows? I am going to be out of town without a good enough video connection for the internet all next week. So we're doubling up on shows this week. Hopefully you enjoy it. Remember, if you do enjoy it, remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and get notified. Bring in the co-host with the most right now, ladies and gentlemen, the head honcho, the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, Farrell Elliott. Welcome in. Happy Tuesday, man. I don't know about you, but I'm enjoying a little maction while I'm doing the show tonight with Toledo and Bowling Green. It's been entertaining so far, but not as entertaining as I feel like this show is going to be.
Hey, this is going to be a great show because we got a great guest. And, Bucky, you and I on Tuesday, it's sort of fresh because, the week hasn't beaten me down to a pulp that I usually am on Friday night. So maybe this will be good. Tuesday night with Bucky. Do you have a score in that Bowling Green action?
You're looking at 21-14 Bowling Green with about a minute to go in the first half.
It's good that they've decided to score some points. They had a very difficult run last week. Good for them. Two prospective NFL players on that team.
On in that game or just on Bowling Green?
Yeah, on Bowling Green.
Okay. All right.
I have a scout of the other team.
Got it. Okay. I apologize in advance, Farrell. I think I told you I was at that Cowboys-Packers game on Sunday at
You
Lambeau
have
Field.
Facebook pictures to prove it.
There you go. Absolutely. I was way too loud. My voice, it was terrible for my afternoon show today. It's probably going to go in and out tonight. So if I don't talk as much, it's probably a good thing that we have Jason Conn on, because we can all pal around when he gets on. So I do apologize in
You
advance.
fueled the comeback, Balky.
And that's what I said. I said all week, there's no way I'm leaving Lambeau Field without a win. And then sure enough, it took overtime, but they got it done. So very excited about that. And I will tell you, I said probably in the second quarter, third quarter, even when they're down by 2 touchdowns, this has been one of the most fun Packers games I was ever at. Had a great time. Took an RV to the game. That was great too. An RV and back. It was a vintage Northeast Wisconsin Sunday, no question. It was I don't know if it was a vintage move by the Arizona Cardinals, but certainly a striking one, a puzzling one. I haven't been able to shed any light on it, but the Arizona Cardinals let Benjamin go, and he gets claimed off waivers by the Houston Texans. Now, Rex Burkhead, who was Damian Pierce's backup there, was averaging just under 6 yards a catch. And you remember Benjamin, when he wasn't playing in place of James Conner, he actually looked pretty explosive, both catching the football and rushing the football. Now, I don't necessarily know if this means Benjamin is all of a sudden the backup there. Rex Burkhead's made a career of people counting him out and then continuing to put up numbers. The Texans get Benjamin. What do we do with them in fantasy, Farrell? Is he a guy that you want to hang on to if you already had him? Or is the situation there just too cloudy to say he's one injury away from being a guy?
Let's see what he does in the passing game. That's been Burkhead's role, but that might be expanded as we move into this part of the season. I like the quarterback skills, and he throws the ball a little more frequently than you would think. He has 300 attempts on the year, so it's a passing team that can rely on that running back. And we're rookies. Pierce has been fantastic, but rookies do sometimes hit the wall. This is a 1-8 football team. They're building for the future. I like the pieces that are in places. They play better than their record. And if Benjamin, there must have been something in the locker room, in the front office, where they could not come to some sort of coexistence between the players coming back from injury. It's a whole nother story. But we're concerned about fantasy football. If you invested in Benjamin, you keep Benjamin to see what might be forthcoming. And in case Pierce, who's been a workhorse for this team, does get banged up, does have to miss some time, like many running backs are around the league, you've got a starter to put in your lineup. So there you are.
Yeah, I'm definitely not cutting him in any of the leagues I have him in. Waiting to see what happens there for sure. Good advice from you. Dave Nowitzki, who's in the YouTube chat right now, he's looking for some good advice on the Chargers, saying he loves the show. Anytime you butter us up with that kind of compliment, you're going to get your question answered, no question. He wants to know, is Josh Kelly coming back this year? If you remember, thank you for the question, Dave. If you remember, Josh Kelly got placed on injured reserve all the way back in week 6 when he had a sprained MCL. He cannot come back until after this week at a minimum. Now, I've been bouncing back and forth between Kelly and Michelle all season, is essentially as the one injury away type guy for Austin Eckler in Los Angeles. But now I don't know if it's worth it at this point to try to figure out what's going on between Kelly and Michelle, because neither one has been very explosive. And I got to imagine that if he does come back, he's not going to be in the greatest football shape right away. It's probably Michelle's job, and it's only significant if Eckler misses time. I think that it's good to roster these backs that are just one play away from being a significant contributor and being a top 15, top 20 running back. I just don't think there's much fantasy value in trying to figure it out between Kelly and Sony Michel, Farrell.
But Dave's a forward-thinking player, and I appreciate that. I'd like to know why he's asking that question. He might be asking it from a fantasy, dynasty perspective. But I know the team likes him a great deal, and we previously did Kelly and Michelle. I think it's back around week 4, and we went with Kelly, and Kelly got a little more bounce and a little more play. I don't know, and I'll tell you one thing: the training staff there with the Chargers, they've earned their salary this year. And if they can get Kelly back, and he's not an explosive runner, but he does everything in the running and the pass catching game well as block. They love the athlete. They love the kids. So he's going to get to play when he does suit up in that Charger uniform.
The other guy to remember is Isaiah Spiller, and he's been a massive dynasty bust. He's been a massive redraft bust. Farrell, is there anything there? Because I know the Chargers put him on the active roster a few weeks ago. He hasn't done much, but is there anything there with Spiller?
He's a good special teams player right now, and he has not shown much given the limited play that he's got. Well, we've got to remember, especially now, there's no way for them to develop an alternative running back because everything – moving on the idea of getting 20 touchdowns, on par to get 120 receptions is Austin Eckler. He's a player that they've got to run this offense through because so many of their studs are not available to them. So that you can't really develop the other talents while you have to lean on Eckler the way they're leaning on him.
Talent that developed pretty quick this past week in Germany was Rashad White when Leonard Fournette went down. Greg Allman, who covers the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for The Athletic, I don't believe this was any sort of reporting on his part, but he does believe that when the Buccaneers get back to Week 12 football after they take the week off this week with their bye, he thinks Rashad White is going to be the starter. Now, when it comes to how the touches are divvied up, because the starter doesn't necessarily mean that it's a 70-30 job or anything like that. Almond did say it's going to come down on who produces. Now, White did start in Week 10 against Seattle. Leonard Fournette went down, but Rashad White crushed it. 22 carries, 105 yards. Fournette had the hip injury in the second half, but it sounds like he's going to be back after the bye. I got to wonder here, Farrell, when we look at Fournette and White, neither one of these guys do you want to cut right now, but all of a sudden White looks like a potential league winner if he could continue this performance going on and starting again in Week 12.
And, all the fantasy players in the FFPC, the KFFSC, were impressed by this guy and expected good returns from him. He was in the spring leagues, he was a very, very high draft pick, and people almost sort of ceded him that job. When I say high draft pick, high for a rookie who we did at that point in time didn't even know where he had landed. Then after the draft, people could make a case for him doing just exactly what he's doing now. And he's been given the chance. And it's going to take a lot of players to right the ship for Tampa, but he's contributing at a time when the contribution means something. They come home, they have a bye, they're 500 with a quarterback that knows how to win. So let's see what happens. I really wish that I had more opportunities of this player, on my roster.
Yeah, I knew I drafted him in a few spots, but I was happy that I was disappointed I didn't have him in more. Right. But I do know him. I have him in a few, and I don't have a whole lot of Fournette. In fact, I don't think I have Leonard Fournette anywhere this year. So I'm definitely rooting for Rashad White going forward. I was rooting hardcore for A.J. Brown on Monday Night Football last night, and boy, was that a big miss. Now, Devontae Smith takes advantage of A.J. Brown only catching one pass, hurt his ankle early. He says he's going to be fine for the next week. But he gets 8 targets, only 39 yards. He does get in the end zone. He catches 6 of them. So Devontae Smith, when you look at him, knowing that A.J. Brown has never been the pinnacle of health, and knowing that A.J. Brown may go into this next week when the Eagles I have the schedule up here, the Eagles end up going to Indianapolis to play the Colts, knowing that he may not be all the way up to speed from that ankle. 32% target share for Devontae Smith, and I feel like you got to find a way to start this guy going forward. We have answered more than a few questions over the last month. Should I start Devontae Smith or this guy? Devontae Smith or this guy? This guy and Devontae Smith? And I think that those questions should probably not be asked in Week 12 because he's been showing that he's not just A.J. Brown's little brother. He's a full.
Yeah, and we have to understand also in this team what's going on at the tight end position. Some discouraging news on Goddard, and that opens up. If you think that way, I tend not to. But yeah, Smith has been a bit of a mystery, and he runs from sideline to sideline better. You had to be surprised after the game when you saw that he 39 yards. He catches the ball and he's moving. He's trying to break tackles. He's doing it. He's always running to nowhere in the passing game, it seems like. But if he gets in the end zone, he's going to give you what you want, and with enough fantasy points to make him a legitimate start. In Brown's case, I don't know if I would ever pull the trigger on A.J. Brown in a draft because, man, do I love the athlete, and I love the kid and everything he brings to the team, but it just his body just you don't understand it, but he's prone to injury in games that affect his level of play and compromises his level of play. He does not have to go to the bench to have his level of play compromised. When he's 100%, there's nothing better. I guess he's a best ball player for me.
Yeah, and I totally get that. And it makes sense. And like, AJ Brown was a guy that I ended up with him in a couple of dynasties, like FOMO picks, like, okay, well, I don't really like this guy, but I don't want to miss out on him, right? And I think a big part of the reason was he was on Tennessee when he was a rookie. And I was like, well, they run the ball. Tennessee, the Tennessee Titans, the Wisconsin Badgers of professional football, were running the ball as a good alternative to running the ball. And I just didn't see an outcome where AJ Brown would pay off on his draft capital. And this year it's been different, obviously, in Philadelphia, where they throw the ball a ton. And I guess I shouldn't say throw a ball a ton. They throw the ball significantly more than Tennessee did. So AJ Brown's been paying off. But these games happen, and certainly the Eagles weren't going to go undefeated this year, and certainly AJ Brown wasn't going to have. He was going to have at least one clunker. We have Jason Conn coming up in the green room right now. He's snacking on some hors d'oeuvres, enjoying some of the fine champagne we have back there. Before we get to him, the last thing I want to bring up: Mike Williams could be back, and Brandon Staley, the Chargers head coach, saying he will practice this week, according to Daniel Popper's Twitter account. Now, they didn't say how, Staley didn't say how much both he and Keenan Allen would practice, if Keenan Allen even practices at all. But if you remember, Mike Williams had the high ankle sprain going back to week 7. And Justin Herbert has been dumping off a lot to Gerald Everett over the middle, and Austin Eckler coming out of the backfield. If Williams is back, the question here is for those of us, like me, who have been riding Josh Palmer as a wide receiver 3 or a flex play, is he going to continue to be flex worthy going forward here? And we'll specifically talk about coming up in week 11, beg your pardon, when the Los Angeles Chargers are hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. Haven't looked on the total on that, but it's got to be right around 50. Farrell, Palmer still flex worthy for you this week if Williams comes back?
I think so, but I want to look at also what they intend to do with Carter. As far as the two injured receivers returning, when Williams comes back, I have to play Williams. In Keenan Allen's case, I want to see it first. I want to see how much he can stay on the field. I don't think he's played a complete game this season. I think he's played parts of 2 or 3 games, if I'm right about that. But, he's been missed. This is the year to avoid him in the drafts. And, you get hurt anytime, but, man, he's going to have a hard time being the receiver he's been with his body compromised like it has been. Now, he's a great presence moving forward. I think as we get closer to the NFL playoffs and get closer to the end of the season, I would feel more comfortable with Keenan Allen, because that's when I expect a player like that to rise above all these nagging injuries and shine. But I don't know at this point in the season that early coming in is what I want to do with him. So, yeah, Palmer and Carter have developed a click. Are beginning to click and have developed that old aspect of momentum with the quarterback. And they, once it's developed, it's not something that you just hide on the bench. So maybe perhaps in this case, more weapons is good for everyone, but I can't wait for Williams to get back.
Yeah, you and me both. And I think the other thing that might make it easier to heed your advice and sit Keenan Allen this week, if he is questionable, if he is a game time decision, that's an 8:20 kickoff for the Sunday night football game for the Chiefs and Chargers. Keenan Allen may not be worth waiting around on, but a guy who always is worth waiting around on, who's been waiting on us, actually. So that's totally true. We'll bring in tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen. It's his 18th year of playing high-stakes fantasy football. He is the winner, of course, of the 2009 World Championship of Fantasy Football title, the $300,000 winner of that. He is the current leader in the 2022 Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship main event. Farrell, remind me, I know Jason Conn has at least one runner-up finish in the main event overall. Has he ever won the whole thing?
Jason Conn has not won the whole thing, but he has flirted with it, and there have been so many trophies that we've gone to Crown Trophy, our trophy supplier here in Louisville, and they know everything about Jason Conn. They want to know how many trophies are going to be meted out with his name on it. They look for Jason Conn. Jason Conn's kind of famous down in these parts.
I do have to remind everybody, if you've been reading the news, the reason that Lake Erie is flowing into Cleveland is because of all those trophies weighing the land down there. And it's been a flow of water in there. You can blame our guest tonight for it. You know him as Team Shocker. We know him as Jason Conn. Welcome back to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, Jason Conn.
There he is.
You guys,
What's up, man?
You guys are too kind.
Fantastic. Look at it. J-Con 216.
The KFFSC sex symbol, Farrell, as you pointed out.
Yes, he is. You know, commissioner duties in the KFFSC are, you know, they're very, very wide. And sometimes, you know, I have to counsel the single girls and see that they're dating and see if they're doing the right things. They'll have a date. They'll have a little social event. They'll get something going on. And I'll say, how did it go? And, you know, they'll be somewhat tepid in their response. And I'll finally drag out of them, well, he's just not my type. And I say, what's wrong with him? Can you sum it up for me? Well, he's nothing like Jason Conn. I get that. I get that from these girls. There's nothing about him like Jason Conn. So Jason Conn is, you know, there's just magic going on there, man. I'd like to be him for just one day.
Oh, well, you only get me in Kentucky when I'm just like flowing with overflow of fun. So
yeah. No, I've seen you in other venues. You have a reputation. And you also have social media, so don't try to wiggle off the hook. You are Jason Conn everywhere you are.
Yeah, and I have a top 2 and a top 5 finish in the KFFC.
And there you go. So yeah, I knew you were runner up one year. What year was that? Was that 2011?
Justin got me. I don't know what year it was, but
2011 was Justin McCord Championship.
Okay. Yeah, then that was here.
All right. So interestingly enough, you are in first place with your Shocker Bourbon Turn team. This was the draft at 7:30 a.m. Sunday morning that I almost slept through. Thank you for the phone call, Farrell. And I feel like I must have been half asleep still in this draft because, as well as my fellow league owners, because you guys got Justin Jefferson, number 1 receiver. You got Travis Kelce, the number 1 tight end, and still somehow Nick Chubb fell to you. I mean, when you and Aaron were doing this draft, and was Dorsey a part of this too? I think
Dorsey was there too. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. See, I was still half asleep. I only saw 2 people.
Yeah.
Were those guys just automatic selections for you in the first 3 rounds? I mean, how much conversation did you have when those guys were staring you in the face in the first 3 rounds?
Yeah. Well, first off, draft at 7:30 in the morning, serving bourbon, advantage Team Shocker.
I knew I was going to be drafting at a handicap for sure.
The field conditions favor Shocker at that point in time.
But actually, this was the 4th and final draft for us, so we wanted to like kind of spread the wealth. We got a C-Mac team. Unfortunately, we had 2 Jamar Chase teams, but we knew we wanted a Justin Jefferson team, and he had been going at 1 here and there, so we bid $100 and got 1 and took Justin Jefferson, but it was solely because we wanted, you know, a different look at the team. We knew we wanted a top flight tight end, and luckily Kelce fell to us because I was all about Pitts in the 3rd, and that has dive bombed so many of my teams this year. And I would have bet my life that he would have had over 100 catches this year, and it just hasn't happened.
And I think the thing for me that's been so disappointing, I brought this up many times on this show, he's got a tight ends coach as his head coach. He is a unicorn at the position, and a player that the team has sunk so much draft capital on. And just for whatever reason, he's had like 2 good games, maybe 3 good games.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where, like, you know, you ask anybody in the business, nobody can explain it. Nobody knows why this is. And Atlanta, maybe it was just a whole, like, we're just going to pound the ball with our 15 running backs that we have. We're going to control the clock, and we're not going to let Drake London and Kyle Pitts get into this garbage time stuff when they normally should be catching a lot of passes. It just hasn't happened. And I was thankful, Jason. I don't know if this has been the case for you, but in regards to Kyle Pitts, I had a price I was willing to pay, and oftentimes there's somebody else in my draft willing to pay a higher price for draft capital, and I missed out on him a lot of ways too. I know you have him in a lot of spots, but certainly you could have probably had him in more.
I could have had ton. Like the 3-4 turn, I was all about like going tight end early if I missed on, you know, Kelce or Andrews. Those are my top 2, and you know I have no real Andrews, weirdly, but tons of Kelce, and a lot of my good teams are Kelce. But I was no qualms about taking Pitts earlier than I should have, and yeah, obviously it did not pan out.
And the Pitts owners are just hanging on to any piece of information they can get, any glimmer of possibility. Mariota was quoted last week as saying, well, maybe I should take a few more chances hitting that player, hitting that big target in the middle of the field. And you think, oh, that's what they're all talking about down there. And then you see the standard 2-reception game for what is a player that we thought would redefine the position. The player, Mr. Jason Conn, has redefined the possession, slot, explosives, touchdown-making wide receiver position has been Cooper Kupp. He came in the league as a third-round draft pick, and people jumped on it quickly, and they've always been rewarded by Cooper Kupp. And even this year, Cooper Kupp, while the Rams seem to can't get out of their own way this season, Kupp was on his way to another fine year until this game. And now we've lost him for the rest of the season. You have rostered one of my all-time favorite players that I just got tired of, just lost patience with because I've been with him for so long. It's Van Jefferson. I think Jefferson's an excellent player. Now he gets a chance to prove it. Will he, if we get a healthy Stafford back, will he prove it? And is he a player that you would utilize going forward in the KFFSC, in the FFPC, wherever you play fantasy football?
Yeah, like you. I mean, I've loved him. I don't think there's a single player I've ever drafted, cut, pick back up, cut, and pick back up again over the last 3 years than Van Jefferson, because I loved him out of college. He was older. He was the best route runner, at great hands. I mean, he was Cooper Kupp, on some level. And then he went to the Rams, and you were just like, oh my God, that's the worst landing spot. But you still got him, and he just hasn't had the opportunity. So you hope this is his opportunity. And I'm a huge Van guy like you. So I do like him. Maybe it's not smart to start him week 1, but I mean, there's injuries and there's buys, and people got to do what they got to do.
I like you have drafted him and maybe unintelligently held on to him for this entire time, except for maybe 1 or 2 leagues. I had to drop him, but he gets the touchdown last week, so you're feeling a little bit better about it. And now with Cooper Kupp, the opportunity is there. So if he can't do it now, I don't know what faith I have for him doing it the rest of the season when and if Cooper Kupp does come back. We do have somebody in the YouTube chat right now. Liam Backus just made a trade in his league. He got rid of Deontay Foreman and Joshua Palmer. In exchange, he gets Chris Godwin coming back. He wants to know if he won or lost the trade. Godwin on bye this week. Foreman gets his bye coming up in week 13. No buys in week 12. Thank you, NFL. And then they resume in week 13 and 14. Appreciate that. So I don't really I guess the easy answer here, guys, I always want to get the best player in the deal. And I think Chris Godwin is the best player in the deal here. Josh Palmer is fine, but Williams, as we just talked about, could be back this week. Keenan Allen could be coming back shortly as well. And if that's the case, then that relegates Palmer to the wide receiver 3 on his team and probably the 5th option behind Gerald Everett and Austin Eckler as well. Godwin is the number 2 option in Tampa, even with the rise of Cade Otton. And, Foreman has been good. He's been very good, but I see a lot of negative game scripts coming his way too. Now, he's been able to buck the trend on those so far. I just don't know if it's sustainable. I think he gets the win. I'd rather have the Godwin side of the deal. Jason, how would you feel about this?
I agree. I like the Godwin side as well. But if you need a running back, it's all about your roster, your league. And, if you had to have a running back and that's all, that's it, and you had a plethora of wide receivers, then I could see doing this deal. But I don't think Palmer at this point, without further Williams and Keenan injuries, he's not startable. He's just not.
I think Liam must have rolled out of bed early and watched the game from Germany on Sunday morning because after you see Godwin play that game, you want
he's back. He's back, baby. He's back.
you want to be a visit. A popular player amongst the rookie class that is somewhat forgotten. We talked a lot about rookies, and I kind of love the guy's name, even without looking at the player, Jameson Williams. It's right up Conn's alley. It's a combination of Irish whiskey and bourbon all in the same name. It's fantastic. And speaking about that 730 bourbon term, for people that are uninitiated to the KFFPC, that league came about because drafters said, we're here for the whole weekend and we want to draft for the whole weekend. I said, okay, you guys want a 7:30 a.m. draft? I'll put it up there. And, naturally it's not going to sell. I go back a few days later and it's gone. It's off the board. And it's one of the first ones to sell. And it's a blast that amongst our 672 teams that you guys came out of that. The least likely trio, we must mention Aaron Laser and our beloved Jeff Dorsey, the least likely trio to show up at the crack of dawn and do anything. But Jameson Williams, let's talk about him as a football player. Let's talk about where he is and how he would fit in for the remainder of the season. Any reason keeping this player on your roster or going to get him if you don't have him?
I mean, if you don't have him, I think he's worth a roster spot. I think if you've kept him this long, how are you going to give up on him? I loved him out of college. He, took the year off with COVID, so I think he was kind of under the radar. But at LSU, he was a monster with some very good wide receivers there. And you just fall in love with the talent. And maybe that's a fault of mine for drafting hurt players and then they never, ever, ever play. Mm-hmm. And Detroit just decides to shut them down because they got nothing going on this year, which is a possibility. But you're the lure. It's like a siren. You see that productivity in college and you think it can happen in the pros. So it's probably stupid. But if you have the depth or open roster space and your roster is good, I don't see any reason why not to hold on to a player like that. He should be back within the next couple of weeks unless, Detroit decides not to play him. But that's how I feel. I mean, he's a talent. I mean, I think he's arguably the top rookie wide receiver coming out of this draft class. And he was just hurt.
That says a lot.
And well, I mean, think about that too. If he wouldn't have torn the ACL, he probably would have been the first receiver off the board in maybe the NFL and in dynasty drafts for KFFSC and FFPC for sure. Okay, so let's talk about week 11 here. You guys have some bye week issues, and I can't remember who it was, but I think it's Tyler Lockett, I want to say.
Kirk, yeah.
And Christian Kirk, that's who it was, two receivers. So right now, you have Terrace Marshall in there. And I know KFFSC isn't tight end premium, but Hayden Hurst has been catching a lot of balls this year, even with the presence of, for Jamar Chase for a while, but then still Higgins and Boyd. So has there been any discussion between you and Aaron and Dorsey that you would potentially move in Hayden Hurst as your flex instead of Terrace Marshall?
Yeah, I mean, the week is still early. Kind of my ritual is I kind of go in Tuesday and I just get guys out on buys, guys that are hurt. I structure the 1 o'clock games down to 4 Sunday, Monday nighters, throw them in my flex. And do stuff like that. So I do like Terrace Marshall's usage. I think it's stepping up. I mean, I think he's coming around. It's probably a little too early to trust him. Hayden Hurst has a ton more targets than Marshall has so far, but Marshall is big play. Any play could go yard. And I think with a 30-point lead right now, we probably will go a little more conservative because I don't think we need to do anything risky, if you're going to play it cool. So
playing it cool is Conn's way of doing things, Balky. And what is hidden within the answer of that question is that if he played Terrace Marshall, he would then be invested somewhat in the newest quarterback of the Carolina Panthers, who previously was employed by a certain Cleveland Brown club that he just might not. There's a lot. Still waters run deep. Team shop.
And we are starting Donta Foreman. So do we really want to be this invested in the Carolina offense?
It's another valid point.
Oh yeah. Hey, I gotta get back to it. Balky, keep commenting because I gotta get back to my question.
Yeah, I was actually, because we were in a group chat beforehand. We had shared the Bourbon Turn photos, the original, the OG Bourbon Turn, and then the Bourbon Turn in 2022. And I'm trying to get them to pop up on the Streamcast or on the StreamYard right now, and I can't do it. But originally, for the uninitiated, as Farrell was saying, when we were drafting, I believe in the 10 o'clock a.m. Saturday draft, Jason, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we were structured on one side of the table, like the 12 through 9 or like 11 through 8 picks, and it was myself, you, Travis Cox, and I believe
Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
And so we walked over at the first break after 8 rounds or whatever, and well, we're in Kentucky. How about bourbon? And so we all do a shot of bourbon, and then the next round we did a shot of bourbon, and then, or not the next round, the next break we did, and then after.
I think it was the next round. Actually,
it could have been the next. Listen, it's a little fuzzy. It was a little fuzzy after a while. But then after the draft, we did it as well. I'm like, wow, we should do this every year, the bourbon turn draft.
And
I applaud Farrell, because I'm like, I always said, like, when I'm there, like, this is my only weekend of drafting. I get,
keep it going.
So schedule something like early, see if it sells out. Farrell's like, it's never going to sell out. And then all the degens, like, yep, there it is right there. There it is. You can see the original picture. Yep. There's Jason, myself, Jimmy, and then Travis Cox right at the end.
Really good.
Right at the bar too, by the way.
Really good crew.
So then it starts at 7:30 in the morning, and of course you got to throw and the food with those great breakfast burritos this year, which was fantastic.
It's perfect. It's literally perfect. It's like literally perfect. It's so fun.
Yeah.
We had such a good time with it. And
it makes me feel
it was a joke 3 years ago, and now it's like a thing.
Now it's a legend.
It is a legend. It is a legend. The guys that originally made it happen may have the trophies this year from it. Bob.
Yeah.
So,
and I now have a sponsorship.
Yeah.
Blade and Bow. Blade and Bow.
You really do need an agent. You really do need an agent. You don't want to hire mine if you want to be on RotoViz. My agent's not going to help you out. But we need to get you an agent. Balky, what's going on in the Chicago backfield?
Well, the thing is, Khalil Herbert just got placed on IR today. In fact, when we were texting back and forth, it just happened. Now, at this point, when you look at David Montgomery and Justin Fields and what Herbert was doing there, Jason, there's been a heavy emphasis on running the football there. And I feel like, we were talking about messing around with Josh Kelly and Sony Michel earlier. Maybe the guy you should be messing around with is Tristan Ebner this week on the waiver wire. How significant of bids are you going to, maybe not in the bourbon turn, but in some of your other leagues, Jason, how significant of waiver wire money are you going to be investing in to get Ebner on your squad?
We all know who the best running back in Chicago is. His name is Justin Fields.
From the Ohio State University.
Yeah. I mean, he's bonkers. I do. It makes me like Montgomery that much more. I mean, he was really good last year because of usage, and I think that usage goes back. And I don't know that they're ready to trust Ebner quite yet. And I know Montgomery's a capable catcher when given the opportunity. Khalil Herbert was better, but he's out of the picture right now. So, I mean, I think it's. The offense is blossoming. I think it's Montgomery's time to shine. He's had a kind of ho-hum year. I mean, so that's right. I think about that.
You're not the only Cleveland Browns fan that comes. You're the most boisterous, and you are the straw that stirs the drink amongst the ingredients in your drink. We haven't mentioned Colin Malloy. We haven't mentioned Eddie O, who brought me a Cleveland Browns T-shirt years ago. and Joe Dorsey, who we miss, but he sends his brother in his stead. John Anderson, one of the greatest fans, guy in the 70s, hadn't missed a game. And Balky, but all those guys, you don't want to ask them like on this show. On our show, you don't want to ask them about Cleveland Browns player. If you really want to ask them and get the real scoop on how they feel about something, you go east and you ask them. And I guess the way they asked the question was the contemptuous and odious team known as the Pittsburgh Steelers and all their nefarious ways and their Steeler Nation and their terrible towels and their terrible ways of treating players have taken another Alabama player, brought him into the league, blossomed him into a wonderful fantasy player, which turned him into a first-round draft pick. And, when people drafted Najee Harris in the first round, everybody shakes their head and says, yeah, that's a good pick. And look what they've done to a running back with some of the best acceleration, cutback skills, great hands. She proved it all last year when they had nothing to offer on offense. He led them, and now he plays in the NFL without catching any balls. This would never happen to a running back in Cleveland, would it? If you had this kind of guy. What are you doing with Harris now if he is on your roster? He was in a flex position for me last week. And, they got down around the goal line, and it was a perfect 2nd and 1. And it was some jet sweep quarterback sneak because it was something that didn't involve Harris. And, there's just a lot of things that don't involve Harris. What are your rosters doing with Harris, considering that you suspended your animus towards the Steelers and decided to take Harris on one of your rosters?
Yeah, well, I felt lucky. I got Harris in the 2nd round after taking Jamar Chase in the 1st in the FFPC. I thought I was dancing. I was like, well, I just got 2 first-round picks. Meanwhile, I got 2 guys I don't really – one I can't start and one I don't want to start. I'm like a ride or die kind of guy. Like I will continue to start people that I drafted high. But the reason you like Najee Harris wasn't because he was efficient. The offensive line sucked. The offensive guy blew, but it was his usage and it was the percent is what he got. And if he was getting all those touches, he was going to be productive. It's the same reason I think that's what Montgomery could be in Chicago. And now you got Jalen Warren coming on, and Najee's not getting the usage, and 3.3 or whatever the carries he, yards per carry he has. That's not going to cut it if you're not getting 80, 90% of the touches.
Balky, you're a married man, and you probably didn't pay any attention to that, but that comment, I'm a ride or die guy, that might be why the girl, I wrote that down. I'm going to use, okay.
Ride or die.
Ride or die. That's it. Conn. Maybe I have to go with that.
What's interesting is Mike Tomlin went out of his way to bring up in his press conference that Najee Harris is dealing with knee discomfort, but he says it's a non-issue.
It's from sitting on the bench. His knees.
The thing is, I think that's so interesting is if it's a non-issue, why are you bringing it up unless you're conveniently trying to cover for this guy just not being very good at football this year? And I know the offensive line is something to be playing.
The offensive line, for one thing, he did have the foot thing in the preseason.
That's true.
Maybe that's just nagging and he's not talking about it. No one wants to be like, hey, this is why. They just want to grunt it out and they want to be a warrior. You can't blame him, but he's not right.
He looks to me like he's moving fine, and he's still got hands that can catch a ball. That's all I'm saying.
Not that I want to bring this name up, Jason, but I've heard this from more than a few people now. Najee Harris is Trent Richardson 2.0.
Oh.
I was so mad when Browns traded Trent Richardson to the Colts.
Yeah.
Like I wish you would have told me you were going to say this, because I
didn't think of it till now.
Do you have 15 seconds? Because I could run up and get this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I made a shirt about how I felt about the Browns. This was like literally the day that they traded Trent Richardson away, because I was like, you're giving up on the season. Like, he's a stud.
15 seconds. You, sir, are on the clock.
Go ahead.
I got to hit the second floor.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
He can do it. Once he drafted 2 teams at once in the KFFSC, and he ran across the room to draft them. He would run from one table to the other.
And he did a pretty good job.
He did. One of his aforementioned lieutenants was not available that day.
So I'm trying to find this right now. It was a first round pick, right? That the Browns got for Trent Richardson?
Oh my goodness, buddy. I can't remember. I found my way home tonight. That's what I'm trying to realize.
Okay. All right. So I'm looking it up right now because I remember that deal. And I remember there's a lot of people that were very excited about Trent Richardson after the trade went down. Like this was going to be the rebirth of his career.
Yeah.
So this is what it was. This is back in 2013, and Trent Richardson was traded for oh my goodness.
So it's brown. It's
You
brown.
made this?
It's brown. It's Brown's colors. It's like you can't tell, but it's like drippy font.
Oh yeah, I got it. I got
Yeah.
it.
So that's how I felt about the Browns. Because like, how are you giving up? Like, why would you trade your best player, a stud running back? Little did I know he sucked.
Right.
But
All right. So the other thing I'm going to look up. So it was, and I know we're going down the Trent Richardson rabbit hole, and I didn't expect this to happen, but so Trent Richardson was indeed traded for a first-round pick. Now what I'm looking at, I believe the pick ended up being the 26th pick.
Corey Coleman or something?
No, well, it looks like they traded it again. The Browns traded it again, and it looks like the Eagles ended up with that pick. And Farrell, I could be wrong on this, but from what I'm looking at, it looks like they drafted Marcus Smith, a linebacker from the University of Louisville.
Yes.
So I think that's how it went down. I could be wrong, but I think that's how it went down.
Yeah, the Browns are moving so many picks then and accumulating them and then blowing them. Like, why blow one when you can blow three?
Yeah,
And you would have to dig in if you want to keep going down that rabbit hole, Balky. I think Trent Richardson at one time or another ended up with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and it was a short-lived experience.
He did.
Yeah, and it's not good stuff. Better things for Najee Harris.
All right, hold on. I'm gonna end this right now. I have to get the button on this conversation. Hold on. So here's what happened, guys. Cleveland had the pick at 26. They traded up to the 22nd spot in the 2014 draft from the 26th pick with Philadelphia. And who did they end up taking at the at 22 in the 2014 draft? None
Kaiser?
other than Texas A&M zone Johnny Manziel. That's how we went from Trent Richardson to Johnny Manziel. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I had to get the last word.
Is there an organization worse than the Browns?
There's got to be some.
I don't know.
What about the Jaguars? What about the Jaguars? What have they done?
They might not have done anything, but they're at least like positive. Like, we've given up all our picks at this point.
I remember I thought things were turning around when they had Dorsey in there with and they made the Beckham trade. I'm like, okay, here we go, Cleveland football. It's all happening. And then it's just for whatever reason it didn't materialize. Anyway,
it's a roller coaster.
All right, so an organization that certainly has had a less than stellar season so far has been the Denver Broncos. They're still wheeling and dealing, trying to make things happen. You have Chase Edmonds on your first place roster. I have not cut him anywhere yet. He's now on Denver. Melvin Gordon is there. Latavius Murray's there. Jason, are you still hanging on to Edmonds? Because I think he's probably the most valuable pass catcher out of those three, but is he going to be fantasy worthy on your roster down the stretch?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, like, I thought he was kind of a steal in the 7th or 8th round when you were taking him, and they brought him in. You thought to be the guy, and then they continued to bring in running backs, and then you were close to maybe wanting to cut him or move on from him, and then he gets moved to Denver, and you're like, oh, new home. And those are just guys. I mean, Melvin, I think, is entrenched as a starter, but I think any hot hand there could, end up being the guy. So yeah, he's worth holding on, and you can't really start him. And yeah, he does have the pass catching, but Melvin does as well. But it just takes an injury or them to decide to go a different direction. So there's 3 guys that I think are pretty equal there in Denver.
Man, we know where the hot hand was in Green Bay this weekend. And it's a perfect example why when a player makes a mistake early on or drops a ball or, go back to him and keep going back to him if he gets well. What a game by Watson. And now Green Bay Packers, now that they won a game, all Balky's old pals like Cobb are coming back. Who else, Balky? Who else from the list?
Well, I mean, Randall Cobb, we're hoping will be back this week. Romeo Doubs is probably not ready to come back yet. But yeah, I mean, Thursday Night Football against Tennessee this week, the Packers could trot out a top 3 receiving trio of Christian Watson, Allen Lazard, and Randall Cobb, which would be pretty good.
Now let's talk about the tight end position, though, because, forever linked, Ertz and Goddard. Both of them have problems physically here. Now Ertz out for the season. I don't know about Goddard on the same weekend. And those guys were the premium picks of the second tier, so to speak. And Tanyan was just a little lost in this. But he's finally I see reason for hope with this player, and I think he can make a difference, especially down where we're going to go with the FFPC. Jason, your thoughts on Tanyan? I don't have him rostered anywhere, and I'm not really that familiar, but nevertheless, he flashes some things that I think could help Rodgers out as we get into these cold weather games. You have this player? Do you like this player?
He flashed last year. I liked him a lot. He obviously got hurt. The reason I have a bunch of them this year is because you didn't know who to trust out of the wide receivers in Green Bay. The injuries, the rookies, Devontae Adams leaving. So you thought he might be a steadying force for Rodgers. Like, he does like people he trusts. I think you can roster him now. I mean, the tight end is such it's literally a dumpster fire as a position. So you could do worse than Tanyan, but he's hard to start right now. But I do have him roster places.
Speaking of dumpster fires, in the tight end position.
Are we back to the Browns again?
No. We're the FFPC will turn the lights off on this show if we expend any more energy talking about Trent Richardson and the Browns. Which, by the way, I don't know if you guys saw the chat. I'll throw it back up. Jack Colsheed, former guest of this show. Tune in to the HSFL for all the latest news and notes. Like the Trent Richardson trade fallout, I'm here for it. Thank you, Jack. We appreciate it.
Knowing your history is a big part of football.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
So the issue now, and Farrell, I think you're right. Dallas Goedert's not going to miss the rest of the season, at least for what we know right now, but he will miss significant time. Good. I'm going to read off these names: Jack Stoll, Tyree Jackson, and Grant Calcaterra. If you've never heard of them, like I am, you are a normal, warm-blooded American male, because outside of Philadelphia, I don't know if anybody else has heard of these guys. In the wake of Goddard's injury, Jason, are any of these guys worth your time in a tight end premium format like Football Guys or the FFPC? Or are you trying to, if you have Goddard, are you trying to fill the position on a different squad?
I think you're just grasping at straws at this point. I mean, the only person I've heard out there is Stoll, barely. The other two guys I've never heard of in my life. But like the tight end position, like after the top 3 or 4, like no one's scoring 10 points. So you're just you're trying to luck out on a touchdown. So, I mean, you're just grasping for straws. And yeah, it's worth a dart. You can take darts, Moreau, Trey McBride. There's all kinds of guys that you can take stabs at. Maybe it's one of these Philly guys, maybe a Detroit guy, comes out. But I mean, the position's a disaster. The next year's drafts are going to be super interesting because quarterbacks and elite quarterback play. You didn't have to take one early, but you had to have elite quarterback play and you had to have an elite tight end if you're doing anything this year.
I tell you who knows who Jack Stoll is. That would be one Chad Schroeder, because Jack's a Nebraska Cornhusker.
Oh,
Richie Schroeder's keyed into that right now.
Nice. He probably picked him up 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, he did. That
dude's insane.
That's the truth.
Farrell, I think we are going to have to move past emails, and you have one final question for Mr. Conn tonight.
Past emails means that Jason Conn, we rely on you to give us the breakthrough sleeper of the week. You can't use a name we've already talked about tonight. Then I want you to tell us who's going to continue in the spirit of Najee Harris and Trent Richardson disappoint us for one bust. So I need a sleeper and a bust.
Okay. I don't know if it's sleeper.
Well, now that's what you need to know, because that's what we need is a sleeper.
Well, I'm going to say, like, good play, bad play. There's 2 feet of snow predicted for the Buffalo Browns game in Buffalo. So I would fade you might want to, if you have better options or slightly okay options, like Josh Allen, do you want to be starting him in 2 feet of snow? Last week with the elbow, I started Fields over Allen, and I know that was pretty close, but it was the right call, obviously.
Yeah.
Let me give you the definition of a sleeper again. This is a player that no one else knows really to start.
Yeah, start.
Jason Conn knows who this player is.
I'm saying look hard at all aspects of the Buffalo running game because of the snow, and maybe Dawson Knox. Not a sleeper, but hey, the short passing game. I don't know if Gable Davis with the long passes. I don't know what Diggs may do. And I don't know what Josh Allen may do, but
I think he'll get the snow off the field. And I always love a snow. You know who hates snowy fields is defensive back. The receiver knows where he's going, and the defensive back, he's slip sliding away, so to speak. So I don't know, Jason.
Yeah. Last time I made this call, there was like that. I guess it was New England when Tom Brady in the snow and he threw like 5-6 touchdowns.
Well, it depends if it's snowing and if there's wind and
Yeah. I mean, 2 feet of snow. I mean, that doesn't happen overnight, and it hasn't happened yet. So
it does in Buffalo.
And bear in mind too, as long as we're talking about Gabe Davis here, outside of last week, Gabe Davis never had more than 4 catches once this season. Now he got 6 for 93 against Minnesota, but outside of that, you're looking at 3 catch games, 2 catch games, a 4 catch game on in Las Vegas, or not in Las Vegas. We're watching the game in Las Vegas when the Rams and Bills played, and then a 1 catch game against the Ravens. So even without the snow, he hasn't been lighting the world on fire too. So that's something to keep in mind with Gabe Davis. So I appreciate, here's the thing. I don't know if I would have brought that up on any other show this week. So I'm glad you bring it up right now, because certainly that's something that we will need to be talking about on Sunday morning.
Yeah, because people sleep on it. They do. Mm-hmm. Like I've lost kickers to it, and it does happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
What about okay, so is that the bus then for you?
Yeah, the bus side's in there too.
Okay, all right. So yeah, then I guess you nailed it all in one game. It's why you won $300,000 in the WCOF. It's why you're leading the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. And there's not a whole lot of people that I've ever had on this show that we could help steer into a Trent Richardson conversation and have a mid-show wardrobe change, which I think is a first, which was awesome.
And we talked about Manziel and Mayfield.
Oh yeah,
And so and now
back to the hate.
And if you want to spend time with Jason Conn and the crew, Balky, there's no better place to do it. You don't have to wait till August. They've already committed to the Super Bowl draft and party in KFFSC, February 11th and 12th, I believe it is this year. So, awesome. Everybody should come and spend time with Jason Conn.
Got to watch my Browns.
Get some tips. Ride or die is the
Browns Packers Super Bowl.
Oh yeah, we can all dream. We can all dream. All right, Jason, I'm going to let you go into that good night. We will continue following you on Twitter at jcon216. And good luck the rest of the way, man. If I can't win Kentucky coming out of the sunrise at the Bourbon term, I certainly hope you can coming out of that league, of which you are sitting in the crow's nest above everybody else in the KFFSC right now. Congrats and good luck the rest of the way, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
You got it. Jason Conn, ladies and gentlemen, the 2009 WCOF $300,000 champion and leading the 2022 KFFSC main event with his co-managers Aaron Laser and Jeff Dorsey. Wow, what an interview, Farrell.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
I just loved catching up with him every time. I would normally say, hey, let's go overtime here, but the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown starts in about a half hour with myself and Rob Abbott.
So and you have no voice. And you have no voice.
And I have no voice already. Yeah, this is going on way too much radio today. Farrell, thank you so much for accommodating me this week and my vacation next week. So thanks for doing the show on Tuesday. We will do this again on Friday with Rob Sussman, who I will talk about in a second here. But thank you so much. Enjoy your Tuesday and enjoy that Maction going on ESPN right now.
Maction is on. I'll go watch that.
Right. Absolutely. Farrell, thank you so much, dude. Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, the KFFSC commissioner of proceedings there and the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. Thanks to him. Thanks to Jason Conn, the FFPC, Rob Bryson, of course, each and every one of you. Like I said, we're back this Friday on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour with the 17th place team owner in the Football Guys Players Championship. Rob Sussman will join us at 10-9 Central. Right here, don't go anywhere. In fact, go get a beverage. Check out the Maction going on. Whatever you got to do, put the kids to bed. We're going to be back live right on this same YouTube channel in a half hour. It's be myself and Rob Abbott, the 11th place team owner in the FFPC main event. And don't forget, we did a special episode of the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown last night with the 40th place owner in the Football Guys Players Championship, Eric Sisson. So you can check that out right here on the FFPC YouTube channel or rotoviz.com/podcast. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network goes live tomorrow from 10 until midnight on the Better Sports Network app, as well as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. Yours truly And Football Guys lawyer to the stars, Drew Davenport, will join me on the program tomorrow. Hopefully he likes talking because I got a feeling my voice is not going to be great. Don't forget to play the FFPC weekly playoff challenge, weekly challenge. 1 player per NFL team. You can play with or without defenses and kickers. And if you want to get in the 10-team contest, $200. You win that. You win a 2023 FFPC main event free entry. Don't miss out on that. If you don't want to play for that, you can also play for enter for $35. You can play in a 30-team format, 100-team format there as well. That's all at myffpc.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share, and get notified. Your Tuesday evening resumes right now, but don't forget that in a half hour, we will be live right back here with Rob Sussman. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate you watching.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
And one other thing I should point out, and I know I said I'd stop talking about Trent Richardson, but just think about that, like the roller coaster of trading draft picks. You had a case where Jason Conn made a T-shirt hating this Cleveland Browns when they traded Trent Richardson for a first-round pick, and it ended up being a steal. And then what happened with that pick? It was traded to get up 4 more spots to draft Johnny Manziel. Huge washout. It didn't work out there. We talked about Christian Watson earlier. Remember, everybody was ridiculing this dude for drops. That he's never going to be anything because he's dropping the football. 2 other big-time receivers. One's in the Hall of Fame. One is on a Hall of Fame trajectory, and they both started their careers with the Green Bay Packers, and they stunk with catching the football. One was James Lofton, beg your pardon, and one was Devontae Adams. Is Christian Watson next in line there? Probably not, but he does fit the prototype of a guy who struggled with drops early, still struggled with drops in that game against Dallas, but is certainly coming on now. As Joe Bryant from footballguys.com likes to say, things change pretty fast around here. And to that end, we're ending this show and we're starting a new one in less than a half hour. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be good. We'll see you on Friday.